Okay, so you ready to go then?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to episode 18 of One Bottle Each, the Foppiano Vineyards Edition. I'm here with my guest, Paul Foppiano. He is a fifth generation owner, president, and vineyard manager for Foppiano. They have been ensconced in Russian River Valley for 125 years. Good evening, Paul, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Gabe. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with you again. It's been over a year now.
I know, and it seems longer just because of I think because of the times we're in. So we've had, speaking of the times we're in, we've had to all pivot a lot during the last year and do a variety of things we've either never done before or done them differently. Is there anything that COVID forced you to do, whether in production or hospitality side or any part of your business, that you actually thought to yourself after having to do it, you know what, that's a pretty good idea. I think we're going to hold on to that after COVID.
It's interesting you say that because one of the first things that came down is when they started locking down California. For us anyway, the tasting rooms got closed immediately. And that very first day I said, well, I was on the phone with our supervisor and I said, well, if you guys restaurants can do takeout, why can't we do takeout wine? And so we're the first ones to do the basically either phone it in or email it in your order and we'll bring it out to your car. So we had the curbside thing going, which people are still doing, even though we're opened back up now. But the social distancing thing, we set up everything outside on tables so we could be spread out. And people really seem to be enjoying that behavior and get spread out rather than sitting in a tasting room, quote, and sitting inside. I think it's brought people more into outdoors. And anytime we can do that, I think it's just better for everybody, the more we're outside. Not just for the COVID, but just in general. I think it puts you in a better mindset when you're sitting out in a beautiful setting than sitting in a room in front of a bar. I think that really helps everybody, and we're going to stay with that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I wonder if there's something to the idea that, unfortunately, some people are still a bit intimidated by wine and perhaps being out in the elements as opposed to in nature, as opposed to in a tasting room. They don't feel as overwhelmed maybe by the seriousness that maybe some people are afraid of.
And it gives you a little privacy. You're spread out at your own table too. You're not standing next to somebody at a counter that you don't know. And maybe you don't ask a question about the wine because you're afraid, like you said, or you feel you don't have the knowledge,
Right. Yeah, that's great. So that's good.
It's been good for us there. We were able to keep all of our staff working the whole time. We have everybody is vaccinated now. And I only had one employee that got COVID, and he got it because he traveled, but he never got sick. He just had a cough for one day. So I sent him home. He got tested. He was positive, and that's the only thing he ever did was had a cough for one day.
That's great. Over a period of
we got very lucky for over a year, and my staff took it seriously.
So at 125 years in, what's the latest and greatest? What's the newest and best thing going on at Foppiano these days?
Well, we got a couple young vineyards coming into production. That's always kind of fun to play with. You never know what you're going to get, but you always obviously hope for the best. And I'll give you guys a little sneak peek here. I have coming into production this year just about it'll be enough for maybe one bin of grapes, but a red Chardonnay that is coming on board.
Oh, wow.
So I don't have any experience with it. The nursery that I bought my vines from wanted to do a test plot. They gave me the vines, and so they are going to be in a production this year. So that's going to be a fun one to play with. Where that goes, I have no idea.
What's the story? What do you know about it in terms of like what the clone is or the history of it?
I do not know a lot about it. I'm in the process of gathering info, and so is the nursery because they don't know a lot about it either. It's brand new. So I will keep you posted on that one. Another one we did is we planned a little bit of Vermentino.
Oh, cool.
To add, we're trying to get to where we can add more special, not just run-of-the-mill varieties for our wine club. Obviously, we want to give them a special treat. And then I also have a block of Barbera coming into production. I'm really looking forward to that. I've always wanted to grow Barbera. I never have. I've been around it. I like the wine. I think it'll be really nice in our black label lineup with our reserves.
And with your family's heritage, to Italian varieties, make a heck of a lot of sense as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Kind of comes full circle.
Yeah. So that brings us to the wine you chose for us to taste today, which is your Sauvignon Blanc, which,
Yep.
In your 125-year history, you started making this Sauvignon Blanc, in 2009. So it's really a baby in the history of your winery. So tell me a little bit about what got you guys to plant Sauvignon Blanc, and even more so, what got you to choose it for today's tasting.
Okay, that's great, and this is one of the reasons I chose this wine. We actually used to produce a Sauvignon Blanc back. My dad was a big Sauvignon Blanc advocate when he was the winemaker and the vineyard manager here. This vineyard was planted in 1969. It's the oldest block of Sauvignon Blanc in the county. It's dry farmed. It's on St. George rootstock, and the trunks on it are about 10-inch diameter. They're monsters. They're just like these little bush trees, and it's got an old sprawl trellis system on it. Like I said, dry farmed, so no irrigation at all. And for years, we were such known as a red wine winery, we didn't make it. We sold the grapes for years. I sold them to Dry Creek Vineyards, believe it or not. They loved them.
I'm sure they did.
We got a new winemaker, and he goes, "Why are you selling that stuff? I want to make it." He goes, "Pick it, get it in here cold, get it in crisp, get it in here fresh, and keep it all stainless steel." And I love this wine. It has some of the neatest characters. It's really a combination Sauvignon Blanc. It's got a great mineral character. At the same time, there's some citrus notes to it. It's not overly grassy. It's not very vegetative, but it's refreshing to me. When I come home at night and I'm taking my boots off and putting a pair of shorts on and getting ready to do my evening chores, I love a glass of this just to kind of as a palate cleanser of the day, just to kind of refresh myself.
Kickstart your evening and your post-work day.
Exactly.
What I'm impressed by here tasting this, and I had it previous vintage but not this vintage before. And what I love here is for a $20 Sauvignon Blanc, you've got really nice texture and mouthfeel going on, in addition to all those characteristics you talked about. And I saw that it's been a couple of months in neutral oak. I guess that's part of where all that texture comes from.
That's where it gets the settling. Yeah, we don't want it to have oak on it. We just want it to mellow it a little bit. And I think it helps that wine have a little more balance.
Yeah, because it's got nice acid, but it's not sharp at all. It's got a softness and a roundness on the finish, and it's really lovely. So how is it, a decade plus into you guys putting it in your line, how's it doing for you?
It's doing really well. It's gotten some pretty good press lately and some awards. It showed real well at the Houston rodeo wine show down there, and it's doing well. And especially right now, the other reason I picked it is that I think the timing is just perfect with summer coming on, the warmer weather. I think it really speaks, evening relaxation, type wine. That's just very refreshing.
Yeah, incredibly refreshing. Whether you want to sit on your porch, so to speak, and just drink the bottle, or whether you want to pair it with lighter foods, it's really lovely. And to your point, it's not really, I think you called it a two-way Sauvignon Blanc. Is that what you said? Yeah. Basically, it's not too extreme in any direction.
No.
But it's not by any means simple. It's just got a bunch of different elements in it that create this really interesting whole.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting note, my grandfather what he used to explain Sauvignon Blanc is he liked it like I do, almost as a cleanser, as a palate cleaning. And he would explain it as the gin and tonics of wine, is what he always called it.
Yeah.
That's just for that refreshingness that, on a hot afternoon, you want something like that, I'm not a gin fan, so it doesn't work for me that way, but for him it does.
Yeah, gin for me, it really depends on the style. I'm more of a New World gin fan than an Old World gin fan, with ones have fresher tasting herbs and flavors in it personally. But I agree about Sauvignon Blanc being a palate cleanser. If I have to taste through or a lot of red wine or a lot of wine in general, I keep a glass of Sauvignon Blanc on the table.
Absolutely. That's I learned that trick a long time ago, and it works really good.
Yeah, it sure does. So
Yeah.
thank you for picking that wine and showing it to me, this vintage. It's really, really delicious. You know, your flagship is Petite Sirah, which represents, I believe, the lion's share of what you guys produce. Tell me about its importance to Foppiano and how if it's shifted over the years, its importance or what it means to you guys. Just give me a little bit of the history of Petite Sirah and Foppiano.
It hasn't shifted, but it's always been our staple flagship wine. My grandfather always spoke very highly and thought very highly of Petite Sirah for the reason that it was so durable and it had so much color and it was so big that in those days everything was burgundy. You had red burgundy and white burgundy, you know, and he loved it because it cellared so well. It's either in tank or in the bottle, you know, so it would hold up with the Cabernets and all the other wines, you know, when you're making your big blends. And it gave the wines a lot of structure, a lot of color, and a lot of ageability. That's where he loved it. And we just have really great soils here for it. It does really well here. It is a little bit finicky to grow. If you get a wet fall or early rains, it's a disaster for bunch rot. You know, it's a real problem. The vines are smaller vines. They're not real big vines, but they do produce ample amounts of grapes. You do have to thin them normally.
How old are your Petite Sirah vineyards?
The oldest one was planted in 1970. That's the one we're going to have today with us.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I picked one of your Petite Sirahs, and it's a single block Petite Sirah. And, you know, you have a large production Petite Sirah. You know, large is a relative term, right? We're still only talking about a few thousand cases, right?
Exactly, correct.
So, you know, so again, yeah, let's use large in that context. And it's a great wine, but I was interested to taste this single block. And, you know, I find Petite Sirah endlessly fascinating. So that's why I picked Petite Sirah. And it is the first grape I think of when I think of you guys. And, you know, I think what attracted me to Petite Sirah early in my wine drinking years was some of the things you said, like the ageability that I noticed. I noticed that you'd find, you know, a dusty bottle of Petite Sirah in a wine shop somewhere, and it had some age on it, and it wasn't really that expensive. And I'm like, hey, this is a little older. Let me pick it up and see what's going on here. And not every time, but almost always, they were interesting and delicious. So that's kind of what led me to make this choice. So tell me a bit about this particular one.
Yeah. To add a couple things before that, Gabe, you are very correct, and it will change in the bottle. Petite Sirah is known for that. It goes through an evolution, and like I was saying earlier about how well it cellars, I will age our Petite against any California Cabernet. And you want to put them in a cellar for 20 years and take them out, I'm in. You know, it's got that much structure to it. But what's special about this block is it's right past my house and beyond the tasting room. You can see the vineyard from the tasting room, and it used to be called Block 3 and 10, and it still is, but we started keeping it separate years ago for our reserve line. And when my daughter was born, we named it after her as the first 6th generation granddaughter.
Oh,
so
cool.
So that's why it's called Gianna's Block, and it's very special. We went through 3 years ago and did a big reclamation in there. We added a ton of compost, redid the irrigation system in it. It's still head trained. I'm not going to take that away from it. I want to leave it in the way it was designed, planted and designed. We put a bunch of replants in. We got our own budwood, you know, and it's really come around. It's we narrowed it down. We got rid of part of it. It's not as big as it used to be, but it's producing better and it's healthier than it's been in a long, long time. And it's almost virus free again. We cut all the virus vines out and replaced them with good, clean ones. And you know, like I said, a lot of our own compost, and, you know, and it's really coming around. We were out there working last week, and the little replant vines are just happy, and they're to the top of the stake. And it's really neat to see it. I really hate getting rid of an old vineyard. I know it's very difficult to balance with production. And, you know, when do you call it quits and just say, you know, it's not producing enough for what we're putting into it? But anytime you can save an old vineyard, I don't care what the variety is. I just think it's worth it if you can do it. If you can financially do it. It's really neat to watch them continue to do their thing and just an old vineyard is so mellow, and you'll crush that wine, those grapes, and put them in a fermenter, and you'll taste it right when it's finished fermenting, and you'll be like, oh God. And then you'll put that thing down at a barrel, and you'll taste it in 6 months or a year from then, and you'll go, oh my gosh, Petite Sirah is coming alive. It's doing its thing. It's evolving. And that's what I really like about it. And that's the neat part.
And I so appreciate those of you who do what you just described, because those old vineyards are part of, the history of wine in California or whatever area you're talking about. And they can't, I don't care if they're 50 or 100 years old, and then you regrow another vineyard at 50 or 100 years old. It's never going to be the same vineyard. You can't replicate that. And they're fascinating to drink. But what you just described, though, that you did to this vineyard just sounds like exactly the right thing. You're getting it to a healthy state. And, if you're getting probably, it sounds like maybe the same amount or more fruit from a smaller amount of vines now that you've gotten it there.
Yep. And we picked the creme de la creme. We kept the best section of it and restored it. And it's just really neat. I walk by it every night when I take my dog for a walk. There's 2 red-tailed hawks that sit up on top of the wind machine that's in that block. You see them every morning and every night. They're out there hunting. They're a part of the landscape. And it just comes full circle. You get used to it. It's almost like a pet. It's just it's right there.
Well, no, yeah, I bet, absolutely, because you're, like you said, you're watching it every single day, so you're truly shepherding it. The nose on this Petite is just glorious. This
is great. I opened mine at about lunchtime, so it's got a little air to it, and it is amazing right now. It's really popping.
I mean, it's got red and black fruit, tons of spice.
That black cherry really comes through when it first hits your palate. But the real thing, I do want to give some credit to our winemaker, Nova Perel, on this. He is really, for a young winemaker, I'm going to say young, he's my age, he's really learned how to work with Petite Sirah. Petite Sirah can be a very difficult monster to tame. There's a lot of them that will be very harsh and have very aggressive tannins. This is a great big monster of a wine, but these tannins are so soft on your palate and so well rounded is what I think is the most important thing in this entire wine. And he deserves a lot of that for the way he treats the wine in the winery. He does deserve a lot of that credit.
It's delicious. The acid is pronounced in a good way, and it is big, but it's quite balanced. And, to what you're describing, I mean, this is easily going to age 20 plus years.
Absolutely. But I'd have a hard time keeping it around 20 years. I'd like to have one of those tomahawk steaks like we had last time I was with you, and we just call it good,
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, it is, because that's the challenge. Petite Sirah, again, we're talking about well-made, well-grown, balanced wines. When they are as such, they're so delicious when they're young with all that primary fruit.
Absolutely.
But they're so incredible when they're older, where they take on these secondary and tertiary characteristics, and they get earthy and sometimes a little funky, and they take on all this other stuff. And that's also fascinating and delicious, but you have to have the patience.
You do. And I've done a couple I did a 30-year vertical of Petite Sirah in the late 90s for a panel one time. And it was very interesting to taste the different vintages. And as they got older, they got very Bordeaux-ish once you got over about 20 years. And it was like drinking an old Bordeaux. I mean, if that's what you're into, I mean, Petite Sirah can do that. It can turn that way over time. And, there's some people that have no idea that Petite Sirah will do that,
and you'll save a lot of money if you age your Petite Sirah instead of your Bordeaux.
Yes, your cellar would be much larger.
Yes, yeah. And I would say nothing against Bordeaux, of course, but I would say more interesting than your neighbor's cellar.
Yes, absolutely.
So, how long have you been making this Petite Sirah, the Jonas Block Petite Sirah?
I think the first vintage we did was, don't quote me, it was 08 or 09.
Okay, so right around the same time you introduced the Sauvignon Blanc, same time frame, yeah.
Same winemaker. Yep. And I said,
Okay.
and we started doing reserve stuff. We do 4 reds in the reserve line.
What else?
A Pinot Noir,
Hmm?
a Zinfandel, and a Carignan.
Ah, cool. Yeah. You have to do Zinfandel in Russian River Valley. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I love our Zin. Our Zin is it's a different style of Zin. It's not that big monster jammy Zin I used to be into when I was, 22 years old. I thought the bigger and the chewier they are, the better they are. And now it's like, get that thing away from me. It's just too much. I want a nice fruit classical Zin, and which I really enjoy. I really like Zinfandel. It's probably my second favorite grape. I think, Northern California was put on this earth for a reason, and it is growing Zinfandel in this area. There are some great ones, and we have some neighbors and growers, friends and family that do great jobs with it.
yeah, it's fantastic. And I think, the thing is, Zin in Russian River Valley, again, when tended and produced, made properly, it's a unique expression compared to Zinfandel grown in, other parts of even just Sonoma County.
Oh yeah, they're totally different than Dry Creek Valley, which is 2 miles away. It's like a totally different creature.
Yeah, completely different, and both can be amazing and so incredibly different.
Absolutely. But yeah, the Petite, I love the black cherry, that cherry cola, the hints of tobacco. It's just a classic wine for me now, given it's what I was raised on. So I'm a little bit defensive of it. I love it. But I like that you can drink it on its own. Or you can have it with a great meal, and it still goes great with a red dish pasta, any kind of barbecue or any kind of red meat or a leg of lamb. I think Petite Sirah really shines.
I agree with you. And, I just want to underline again, when you're talking about this kind of Petite Sirah that is incredibly balanced, it will go with that red sauce you're talking about. If you get into those monsters that some people make, much like the monsters that some people turn Zinfandel into, it's not so much going to go with your red sauce and your pasta on Sunday dinner.
No, you're going backwards. You're getting away from the characters of the varietal.
Yeah, but this will.
Yeah, and that's a real problem I have with wines today. That personally, it bothers me when I pick up a glass of wine or somebody hands me a glass of wine and they go, "Oh, this is a Pinot." And I said, "That's not a Pinot." I said, "There's no possible way you can get Pinot Noir to color like that. It can't happen."
Correct.
I said, "How much Syrah is in it?" "Oh, none." I said, "Seriously, how much Syrah is in it?" I believe in varietally correct wines. I'm not against putting 5% Zinfandel in a Petite Sirah to give it a little bit of flavor and vice versa. Give us in a little bit of color, but let's not be dumping, 40% in things and trying to call them varieties still. I believe in keeping varieties true to their nature. I think the grape and the wines deserve that.
Yeah, agreed. Otherwise make a blend. And,
we make those, we have those. That's fine. But
yeah. And to your point, Zin and Petit are great dance partners. They have been for all time, right?
Oh yeah.
But Pinot Noir is a soloist. It wants to dance on its own.
Yes, it does. And it doesn't need any help. It's a great, elegant wine. It has beautiful floral hints when done properly. And it doesn't need to be a black ink monster like a Petite Sirah. That's not Pinot Noir. It's a light wine, and people just want to make it bigger. It's like you're killing the variety. It just drives me nuts sometimes. And I respect it. A lot of them are making more money than I am. So they're doing it. That's great for them. But I like to stay varietally correct, and as does my team and my winemaker. So it's awesome.
Well, God bless you for that, because I appreciate that. Because especially with any wine, but with Pinot especially, it's really it's a shame the way people can bastardize it at times.
Absolutely.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for doing this, but I do have one final question for you before we go. How's your beard? I mean, from here it looks pretty good, but I just want to make sure things are good with the beard.
My hair tie out of it. So.
All right. See, now that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right.
There we go. How's that?
Cheers to the beard.
There you go. Cheers. Great to see you, Gabe. It was great
Great.
talking with you again. I appreciate. I look forward to hanging out next time I get back to New York and have some dinner again, and treat you to some new wines. Hopefully, I'll have some fun stuff. Some new stuff that hasn't hit the market. It'd be great